There's a new poll out. I just saw this headline over at Just the News. It says all-time low, 38% of adults extremely proud to be American. Only 38% of Americans are extremely proud. It's an all-time low. And there's a new documentary film out on Fox about the divided hearts of America. And joining us to talk about that is the guy behind the lens on the project, Jason Jones. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Joe.
Praise be to God. Yeah, welcome back to the 48, the Continental. How was your stay back home in Hawaii?
Yeah, it was beautiful. My oldest daughter was married, and so that was wonderful. To a good man, a Navy man.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And it's been a rough year. You know, I've kind of been a deadbeat father with work, and it's been kind of all-consuming since August of last year with the collapse of Afghanistan. So. It was nice to give my family some attention.
Was that, I've given a son over in marriage, but I've not yet given a daughter over. How was that emotionally as a dad?
Yeah, you know, my oldest son is married, so it's a bit more emotional with your daughter.
Yeah, I know. I got some anxiety about it. I'm praying.
Yeah, I think he's going to walk your son down the aisle, right?
Right,
you know,
exactly.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely an emotional difference there. So, well, how beautiful. Praise be to God. You have so many projects that we want to talk about. Let's start with the Hearts Divided in America. This new Fox News documentary that you've been a part of. Tell us about this.
Yeah, it's on Fox Nation right now. It's Divided Hearts of America, starring Benjamin Watson, the standout NFL star tight end for the New England Patriots. He retired 2 years ago. In the wake of Governor Cuomo signing into law this radical abortion bill in 2019 that denied the child in the womb any legal protection up to the moment of birth, my production, a group of friends of mine, we were producers. We're always looking to do projects together. We were working on a television series, but Elizabeth Kennedy Reisowitz pitched us this idea, and she didn't feel one way or the other about abortion. I don't think she thought about it much until that New York law. Mm-hmm. She wanted to know, how did we get to such an extreme place? So Benjamin Watson traveled the country. He interviewed people on both sides. We got to interview the senator that wrote that bill in New York. He appears in our documentary, the two senators that introduced it. And it's an exploration in how did America get to such an extreme place on abortion. But in doing that documentary, what Benjamin Watson discovered was really abortion is not dividing us, the debate. It's abortion's denial, or Roe v. Wade's denial of the founding principle of our country, that is leading to division. So slavery, segregation, and abortion are really at the root of all of our severe divisions in this country, because they fundamentally denied our principle of unity, the Declaration principle.
I was pondering this a little bit last night as the news came from outside of Chicago, and this newest mass shooting from this alleged shooter whom they have in custody, somebody who went by a rap name of Awake the Rapper, I think is his name. And you start to see sort of very disturbing things, and you wonder, golly gee whiz, why can't we see these things coming a mile away? There's so many signals, there's so many things to give us caution, pause, and we ought to be concerned. But nonetheless, the thought came to me, the only thing we're lacking really is a serious moral compass in our country, and it seems like our moral compass becomes more and more degraded as we go, generation by generation. How do you see that?
Well, I think that the logic of Roe has worked its way through our culture and our laws in so many ways, and school shootings are one of those ways in which we see violence erupting. Yeah, it's, I'm a conservative. To conserve is relentless action. I left my home for a month and you come back and there's so much work to do. So yeah, I believe that we need to conserve our republic and our values. But at the heart of it is really, as a polity, as a political community, as Americans, it's that Declaration principle. We're the only country in the history of the world that is founded on a vision of the human person. Abraham Lincoln called the Declaration of Independence the Declaration principle embedded in the Declaration of Independence. He called that the work of art, and the Constitution was the frame to protect that work of art. And so we, as a political community, especially as Catholics, I think it's our responsibility to tell the truth about the human person, about the inviolable and beautiful dignity of the human person. And so that's something we try to do through our apostolate and through our films.
You know, Jason, I was just thinking as you're saying that we just celebrated the 4th of July yesterday. And, you know, so many people in America today from both the right and the left are not proud to be Americans. They reject America. And, you know, I recognize that there are issues with America. There are plenty of. I mean, key was Roe v. Wade that we just overturned. And now, you know, going to help turn that over in every state in America. But how can we still be proud to be Americans today, despite the fact that there are so many negative things here? Because I know I am proud to be an American, even though I recognize the errors and problems with our country.
Yeah, and I think when we say we're proud to be Americans, what we're saying is we're grateful for the sacrifices that those who came before us, made so that we can live in such privileged lives. You know, even as Catholics, I'll tell you, I was invited to a meeting at the Vatican by Pope Benedict about 15 years ago, and there were leaders from every country in the world invited. But the only country where I would say working class people were the representatives was the United States of America. From Europe, they were royalty or they were very wealthy, very powerful people. And then the American representatives were working class, middle class folks. And I thought even my church treats us, just regular old Americans, with a special dignity. You know, we're just so blessed. There's a gentleman that runs my Afghan evacuations. His name is Prince Wafa. Prince, my organization, he actually was stranded in Afghanistan after the fall, and he saw me appear on EWTN News when he reached out to me. And then my organization was able to help facilitate his rescue because he is a U.S. citizen. He went back to get his wife, whose visa hadn't been processed.
Oh, wow.
And when he saw Afghanistan collapsing a year ago this month, he went back and then got stuck himself and then saw me on EWTN. We helped rescue him, and now he manages our evacuations. But he was on my podcast, and he was telling the story because he has an American flag in his at the time he had an Uber when he was an Uber driver, and somebody was giving him grief for being Afghan and Muslim, and they had asked him, "Are you proud to be an American?" And he said, more than being proud, he says, of course I'm proud to be an American, but even more importantly, I'm striving to be an American that my country will be proud of. And I think these recent polls where people aren't proud to be an American, I think what they're saying is they recognize they're not the types of persons that their country would be proud of. And I think that's something that we should all strive to be, is someone that our country would be proud of. This guy, Prince Wafa, had started volunteering or working for the U.S. Armed Forces before he was 16 years old. But then from 17 to 23, he was a translator for Special Forces, earned his citizenship that way, came to America with nothing at 23. And now he's 30 years old. He owns a 7-Eleven. He manages 3 others.
Wow.
And he said, you know, Jason, in America, there are no closed doors. If you have the energy and gumption to walk up to a door, that door will open.
You know, one of the struggles that I've had as a conservative in our country, somebody who's like you, I've served in the military. My family's all served in the military. We should be patriots. But I got to say, more and more in the conservative camp, I don't know what they're conserving anymore if they're not conserving traditional marriage, if they're not conserving in the economy, if they're not conserving in foreign policy. It seems like more, even on the more conservative side or the right, as a lot would say, aren't really conserving anything. How would you see that, Jason Jones?
Yeah, I would say that people confuse maybe rightist ideology with conservatism. And we're in a period of a lot of change and struggle. And it is, you oftentimes have to ask, what do conservatives think they're conserving? But I'm actually very hopeful as a conservative to see that we've seen the overturning of Roe v. Wade. That took a lot of work. I remember not too long ago, I worked for the RNC in 2004. And one of the reasons I wanted to work for the RNC was to battle within that institution to front shelve the life issue. Then in 2007, I was National Grassroots Director for Sam Brownback for president. And if you remember, in those primaries, you had Giuliani, who was openly pro-abortion at the time, running. You had Bloomberg. You had Mitt Romney, who was running on every side of the abortion issue, depending on what state he was in. But then you had Brownback and Huckabee, and that really pushed the pro-life movement into more political prominence. So there's always this constant, relentless struggle. But here we are. As Father Frank Pavone said on my podcast, all the Supreme Court did was open a locked door. And now the door's open, and now we have to ask the question, are we going to walk through it and create a culture of life in our states? That's something that's up to us. But I agree with you. I think what are we conserving? It's someone had told me that Fox News in June, I don't watch cable news, but he told me that on Fox News, they had the rainbow logo for part of the month of June, and we look to that as the conservative outlet. So you're right. It seems like we are constantly losing ground, but then we're taking ground. And I think it all begins with advancing the Christian understanding of the human person. Our founding fathers called the Declaration principle self-evident, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, but really it's not self-evident. It's the revealed truth that the Catholic Church introduced to the world, this nature of the human person. So what these descendants of the Puritans wrote in a document as self-evident was really Catholic anthropology communicated through centuries by the church and then received as self-evident. And that's something that we really need to do, is push for a self-evident respect for the human dignity. I talked to my children. My daughter came home from homeschool gym class, and she said, "Dad, I think that the end of the world is almost here." And I said, "Well, why is that, Princess? What's going on, Princess?" And she was so distraught and so scared. And she said, "I think God's just sick and tired of us." I'm like, "What happened at homeschool gym to make you say this?" She goes, "Well, one of the students was introduced as a new gender today." This was at homeschool PE. And I had said, to my daughter, I said, "Well, Princess, God is very patient with us. There have been more offensive ideologies of evil and enthusiasms that have taken the world, like the racial ideology of Nazi Germany. It's very similar to gender ideology today." And I was trying to explain this to my daughter. But we live in very, very strange times where kids, especially children, are the victims of these ideologies. But I think this ball is going to bounce in our favor with these young people swinging way to the right.
Oh, have you seen, I imagine you must have seen The Hidden Life, the Terrence Malick film?
Oh, I'm a huge Terrence Malick fan, and The Hidden Life is, Franz Jägerstätter. I've read all of his letters. Yeah. And The Hidden Life is one of my favorite movies, for sure.
I'm not a big Terrence Malick fan. The stories are great, but man, I can't take that much wide angle and jump cuts.
Tree of Life? Are you kidding me?
Oh man, it was too much. I mean, the Thin Red Line with Jim Caviezel. I mean, it's just so introspective and such a slow burn. But it's a beautiful story, and there's so much beauty to The Hidden Life. I watched it for the first time over the weekend with my wife. I had been putting it on the back burner for too long, and I finally broke down and watched it. And yeah, there's a lot of things I could say to criticize the film, I suppose, from a production standpoint. But the story itself is beautiful. The little touches of the Catholic life lived daily were very beautiful. But it reminded me that we live in a day and an age where we have very little choice. We have to go along to get along. Even this morning, I read a report about how almost 700 fighter pilots are being kicked out of the military for not getting the shot. And we live in a day and an age where we are expected to go along with whatever woke ideology they dream up these days. And if we don't, well, then we're going to be made an example publicly. And I saw parallels in The Hidden Life. Have you contemplated that?
Yeah, no, my wife refused to watch The Hidden Life for the longest time because the nature of my work sometimes, I say I go to the most beautiful places in the world where the most wonderful people live, but I go at the worst possible time. So my wife said, "I know why you want me to watch that film. You want me to come to terms with your death and martyrdom."
Yes, exactly.
I have thought about that. There's a great line that's in one of his letters. He said that, because is it that God does not expect? He's being criticized for being a married man with children and refusing to say the Hitler loyalty oath. And he said, does God forgive married men with children when they offend him?
Yeah.
Should I be allowed to offend God because I have a wife and children? And so, what I love about that film is, now we have consequences at every turn. In fact, I'm on a thread with several friends who are fighter pilots and they serve in special operations. And they have all been waiting this week to see if they're going to be on that list because they've refused to be vaccinated. And so it's very sorrowful. I thought with the nature of my apostolate as a young man when I was coming out of college, and I had this idea of starting an apostolate that served the most vulnerable communities in the world, that I was placing myself in position of extreme sacrifice. But as I look now, I realize that I've sheltered myself. I run an apostolate. So I'm looking at all my friends that chose sort of standard conventional paths in life. And so many of them in the past year have lost their job. One of my best friends who listens to your show, it was a lead lobbyist for a realtor association and refused to get the vaccine, and he lost his job as a lobbyist.
Wow.
And he can't find any other job that doesn't require him to move away from where his family is unless he gets the vaccine. So it's quite sorrowful that we're in a place like that in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And again, if this leads someone to say, well, see, how can you be proud to be an American? Well, I'm really grateful that I was born into a polity that gives regular folks like us the ability to work through the constitutions of our state and the federal government for change.
Amen.
And we just saw this with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. That was the fruit of millions of Americans working with discipline over the past 50 years. In a polity of over 300 million people, our will doesn't, we don't have our will to power. We can't just change everything in the blink of an eye. But 50 years isn't the blink of an eye, really, in the life of a political community. So we just have to continue to work through culture, through radio, through our personal apostolates, because we want to leave our posterity a culture of life, a civilization of love.
I wanted to ask you, as a follow-up on the story out of Ukraine with your team there that got rocketed. How is your apostolate doing in Ukraine these days, and how is that particular team doing?
Well, those guys are okay.
Praise be to God.
One was wounded pretty seriously, but he's okay. The other two were wounded in driving the very next day.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Ukraine is tragedy. And, we have over 2,000 orphans now in shelters in Western Ukraine. But it's just become overwhelming. There are not very many organizations operating inside Ukraine. As far as we know at this point, we're the last organization operating inside Afghanistan. So between Afghanistan and Ukraine, it's been crushing. But then we have problems here in the United States where Ukrainians were told to present themselves at the border. And they would be admitted into the country. But instead, what happened was Ukrainian women have been sent to jails all across America, these detention centers where they've been held for over 90 days. Wow. Really horrible situations. So my organization, we're sheltering orphans in Western Ukraine. We're working today. My first order of business is to see if we can get some of these Ukrainian women out of these detention centers. In Afghanistan, we have over 7,000 SIVs. Those are Afghans who are being hunted by the Taliban because they served the U.S. forces. We still have over 7,000 in safe houses that we're caring for. But according to the State Department, there are over 70,000 SIVs in hiding across Afghanistan and Pakistan right now.
Wow.
So there's a lot of work to be done. And to me, especially in Afghanistan, this is a point of national honor. We abandoned our friends. We abandoned U.S. citizens. We abandoned the spouses and minor children of U.S. citizens. Right now, we're working at getting an American green card holder reunited with their 1-year-old child. We've been working with the State Department now, but it's almost been a year. Mm-hmm. And so this is the sorrowful situation that we have. At the southern border, we have this porous border. But yet the Afghans we've committed to giving visas to can't even get meetings with the U.S. State Department.
Yeah. Wow. I want to encourage everybody to check out thegreatcampaign.org. The website is thegreatcampaign.org, and maybe consider a financial contribution to this incredible work that Jason Jones and his team, the many people who are part of it, you'd be doing a great service to them and helping them help others. That's thegreatcampaign.org is the website. Jason, how else can people see the Divided Hearts of America? Is it just through Fox Nation, but isn't it streaming elsewhere as well?
Yeah, it's streaming on Amazon. I heard you guys are doing an Amazon Smile campaign, so you can watch it on Amazon and then do it through Amazon Smile, and you can give a donation to the radio network that way. But wherever you download movies, it's there.
All right. Praise be to God. God bless you, Jason Jones. Always great to have you on the show.
Thank you, guys. Good morning.
Have a great day. That's going to do it for hour number 1 of Catholic Drive Time. We're so grateful to Michael Hitchborn and Jason Jones for sharing with us their updates. If you can join us in the next hour, we would love to have you. Brent Haynes is going to be on the program, our attorney and analyst of, he's got some interesting updates on how the public school system across the nation could be severely impacted. Join us online if you can, grnonline.com/TDT. Otherwise, we'll see you back here tomorrow morning. God bless you.